Is that okay now?
Okay, meine Damen und Herren,
Ladies and gentlemen, today on the 9th of November 2020, we in Germany, like every 9th of November, think of the worst and the best things that happened in our history. We think of the atrocities of 1938, the pogroms committed against Jewish people in our country, the synagogue set on fire, Jewish property burnt and destroyed. We remember the terrible crime of the Shoah committed by Germany with great shame. And we think of the 9th of November 1989, the joy of the people here, right near here, the fall of the Berlin Wall, first opened and then fell. And just a few weeks ago, on the 3rd of October, we celebrated the 30th anniversary of German unity. Without this faith, particularly of the Americans, it wouldn't have been possible, and I will always be grateful for their confidence in us. We Germans experienced directly just how important the role of the United States of America is for liberty and democracy in the world. We experienced directly, firsthand, just how important German-American friendship is, how important transatlantic relations are for Germany, for Europe, and for the world. The entire world watches the U.S. presidential elections every 4 years with particular attention. Now, once again, American voters have chosen their president-elect. I want to congratulate Joe Biden as the 46th president-elect in America. He has a great deal of experience in foreign policy. He's very familiar with Germany and Europe. I remember very good meetings and talks that we have had in the past. I also want to congratulate Kamala Harris, the vice president-elect, as the first woman in this position and as the daughter of 2 immigrants to America. For many, she is an inspiration, an example of what is possible in America. And I look forward to meeting her. The friendship of our 2 countries is one that has stood the test of time over many decades. Many people here and there live this German-American friendship. It is a treasure that we must preserve, that we must cherish, and we must pass on to new generations of Europeans and Americans, of Germans and Americans. We are allies in NATO. We share common values from the dignity of the individual, from the rule of law and democracy, and we have common interests as well. The United States of America and Germany, as part of the European Union, must stand together to tackle the major challenges facing us in this day and age. We must stand side by side to cope with the test that is the pandemic. We must fight against global warming. We must fight against terrorism and stand side by side for an open global economy and for free trade. For this is the foundation of our prosperity on both sides of the Atlantic. We Germans and Europeans know that this partnership in the 21st century is one that requires us to take on more responsibility. America may remain our most important ally, but the expectation, quite rightly, on us is that we make stronger efforts to ensure for our own security and to assert our convictions in the world. And we, as Europeans, have long set off down this road. It has been a time of conflict in which the U.S. voters gave such a great deal of responsibility to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I wish them every success. God bless and thank you.
You have been watching German Chancellor Angela Merkel speaking in Berlin today, congratulating Joe Biden on his win for the U.S. presidency, and also Vice President Kamala Harris elected in this historic election. DW's Melinda Crane, our chief political correspondent, is joining us here in the studio for reaction. A big stress here on the importance of the United States globally when it comes to democracy, when it comes to freedom, when it comes to rule of law. Really stressing also the importance of the relationship with Germany and the United States. It sounds like she's expecting a great reset in relations.
Indeed. As I said before, the Chancellor tends to be very measured and restrained, but that was a downright emotional speech in part, where she talked about the treasure of transatlantic relations and how very important that had been. And I don't know if it's just me, but I think it's quite interesting that she began with this historic day and the examples of the tyranny that Germany had experienced, both through the Nazi epoch and then during the Cold War, and that she linked those examples of tyranny then to the healing role that America had played also in promoting democratic socialization here in Germany. And I think it probably won't have escaped many viewers' notice that during those days when the outcome of the U.S. election was unsure, we heard German politicians reminding Americans about the importance of respect for the voting process, the importance of respect and trust in democratic rules and proceedings. And I think between the lines, I saw some of that here as well, with the Chancellor essentially perhaps reminding us that the U.S.'s democratic system itself was at stake in this election. Certainly a very resounding affirmation of what she hopes will be possible with this new administration, and also a very resounding affirmation of Kamala Harris.
Absolutely. We have to talk about that because, of course, she is the first woman. She is the first woman of color elected to the vice presidency in the United States. No matter what your politics are, that is a historic moment. And the Chancellor saying she's looking forward to meeting her, isn't she?
Yeah, that was also very nice and very personal, again, from a leader who is not always all that personal. You know, we're seeing this picture right behind us of Kamala Harris in her white suit. That white suit is the color worn by the suffragettes, those who fought for women's rights 100 years ago. And the Chancellor basically talking about the significance of a woman, person of color, taking this important office for the first time. And Kamala Harris herself, in her speech on Saturday, talked about the fact that her mother had told her, you should be the first woman to do things, but not the last. And Kamala saying, many little girls are watching this and now know what is possible for them as well. Certainly, that is what the Chancellor has been as a woman leader in this country, a role model for many, many women. And I think she's looking at Kamala as a comrade.
Absolutely, absolutely. She's also looking toward Joe Biden, we have to say. And she mentioned his experience. She mentioned the fact that he's a friend of Europe. She mentioned the fact that they have had productive, great meetings in the past. What should we be looking at here when it comes to the relationship that could be ahead between these two?
Well, I certainly think that there will be a big push on climate. Climate is a subject that is of great importance to the Chancellor. She essentially, the term that Joe Biden likes to use, build back better, those are words that she herself used in the pandemic as the first rescue packages were rolling out, that she said, you know, we have to do this right and we have to send the right signals to the economy. So I think there will be definitely some good room for collaboration there. Then trade issues. She talked about the importance of trade. There are going to be some challenges there. Joe Biden is not a free trader who is going to return us to the old unfettered globalization. He would like to see measures put in place in the U.S. to bring supply chains home to at least some degree. We may see border adjustment taxes put into place or something resembling that. There could be some challenges there with Germany, but I think what we can be assured of, and the Chancellor basically was stressing this, there will be dialogue. there will be attempts to find compromises. There will be work within multilateral institutions, whether it's the WHO for health, whether it's the WTO for trade, NATO. We will no longer see the U.S. turning its back on multilateralism, and that is basically what we saw over the past 4 years.
Again, German Chancellor Angela Merkel speaking just a short while ago, acknowledging the U.S. election, the importance of that relationship between the U.S. and Germany, congratulating Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Melinda Crane, our chief political correspondent here in the studio, breaking it all down for us. We're going to take a short break now. We will be back again at the top of the hour here on DW News. But in the meantime, we want to tell you that world leaders have been sending messages of congratulations to Biden and his running mate, Kamala Harris. But two notable exceptions are Russia and China, which have yet to hail the incoming president.
Joe Biden. Joe Biden's triumph is being celebrated well beyond the borders of the US. World leaders from every continent have congratulated the new president-elect. The EU stands ready to intensify cooperation with the new administration and the new Congress. There is a lot to do, but we can strengthen our ties from our foundation of friendship and partnership. Britain, Germany, France and other European countries were the first, along with Canada, to send their congratulations. Most expressed hopes of renewed unity and cooperation following 4 years of tense diplomacy.
I look forward very much to working with President Biden and his team on a lot of crucial stuff for us in the weeks and months ahead. Tackling climate change, trade, international security, many other issues.
On the streets, there appears to have been a collective sigh of relief from Europe. I am relieved because these last days of insecurity that were weighing on my heart have been lifted. The nightmare of the last few years is over. There will certainly be a new political direction, especially when it comes to the environment. I see a brighter future than before. To Asia. Biden seems open to accepting people's different viewpoints and wants to move forward in a united manner. That's positive. Africa.
I am absolutely thrilled that Biden's won and a little bit scared about what Trump might do next.
Why is that?
I think he's quite a scary, unpredictable man.
And the Middle East.
They say Trump's better for Israel, but I think when you're better for the world, you're better for Israel too.
This offers us hope. Biden is very different from Trump. Trump bullied us and wanted us to appease him. For countries with a historically difficult relationship with the US, Biden's election evokes little hope. For the future development of the China-US relationship, Trump didn't do a good job. I don't hold much hope for Biden too. Trump talked about improving relations with Russia, but it didn't come to anything. Biden is openly against Russia. All eyes are now on Biden and what changes he may bring to foreign diplomacy for the US.
And let's get more now. We are joined by DW's Yuri Roshetto, who is standing by with the view from Moscow. Yuri, the Kremlin has been remarkably quiet. Does silence speak volumes?
Hi, Sarah. Well, we have no official reactions from the Kremlin so far. You're right. Russian President Vladimir Putin only commented once on Joe Biden's possible victory. That was the day after the first TV debate between Trump and Biden, so some weeks ago. As expected, Putin chose his words very carefully. On the one hand, he said he appreciated Biden's words about the possible extension of the START 3 nuclear treaty between Russia and the United States. The current agreement expires in February next year, and unlike Trump, Joe Biden has said he's ready to extend it. So Putin praised Biden for that in early October. On the other hand, Sarah, he complained that Biden's campaign speeches were heavily influenced by anti-Russian rhetoric, as he said. Also, there is something that has already overshadowed Moscow's relations with Biden. In 2011, when a reset in Russian-American relations still seemed possible, Biden came to Moscow to meet then-President Dmitry Medvedev and then-Prime Minister Vladimir Putin. After his talks with Putin, he made a surprise visit to non-systemic opposition politicians and told them that if he were Putin, he wouldn't stand for a third term as president. His words sounded like a threat. They were heard in the Kremlin and, of course, couldn't be quickly forgotten.
Yuri, given all of that, how could we see U.S.-Russia relations potentially shift now with President-elect Biden?
Well, although Vladimir Putin, as I said, allowed himself a few kind words about Joe Biden at the end of October, Russian experts here in Moscow do not expect a reset in the relations between Washington and Moscow. In their opinion, U.S. policy towards Russia under Biden will most likely be more predictable than under Trump, but it will be tough. And the subject of human rights, for example, which is always uncomfortable for the Kremlin, will be high on the agenda. Trump's main goal was to make America great again, but Biden and his Democratic presidential administration will likely place a renewed emphasis on the fight against human rights violations. So Moscow, therefore, could even face some new sanctions, for example, for the poisoning of the Russian opposition politician Alexei Navalny.
So there hasn't been much reaction, you mentioned, in terms of the top politicians there in Russia to this election. But Yuri, I mean, you've also been out on the streets there. What are people telling you there in Russia?
Yeah. Look, there is an opinion in Russia that Donald Trump had a better attitude towards Russia than Biden. And when Trump first became president, Russians certainly expected that relations between the two countries, would improve significantly. But ultimately, those hopes have not been fulfilled. So, of course, many Russians I spoke to now hope that Russian-American relations will finally improve. But that sanctions, for example, would be lifted one day, and so on and so on. On the other hand, we also have lots of reactions in the Russian media. Russian state TV is sticking by Donald Trump. The state channel Rossiya repeats Trump's baseless claims about a stolen election. The goal here, I think, is clear: to downgrade U.S. democracy in the eyes of the Russian people.
Yuri Vashetto with a view from Moscow. Thank you.
Markets in Asia have started the week on a strong note after news of the US presidential election results and Joe Biden claiming victory. Investors expect trade tensions to de-escalate under a Biden presidency. That's seen as a plus for Asian markets and economies. Japan's Nikkei index is up 2.1%. Shares in Shanghai, Hong Kong and South Korea are also up around 1.5%. Meanwhile, future US policy is not entirely clear, with President Donald Trump refusing to concede and control of the Senate still up for grabs. Standing by in Frankfurt is our financial correspondent Chelsea Delaney. Chelsea, are investors in Frankfurt as optimistic as those in Asia?
Well, markets here in Frankfurt are certainly starting on just as strong of a foot as Asian markets had earlier in the day. The DAX is up about 1.7%, and that's after we saw markets really skyrocket last week. Even before the election was decided, the DAX here in Frankfurt rose about 8% last week. We've seen U.S. indices closing in on record highs, so there's certainly a lot of positivity on markets right now. What we've heard is really that investors are looking at this as an ideal scenario, as really a Goldilocks situation where we are likely to get a much more stable presidency. We likely won't see the same kind of attacks on specific companies, attacks on specific trading partners via Twitter like we had through Trump, and that had really unsettled markets, the unpredictability of that presidency. So we likely will see more stability going forward through President-elect Joe Biden. But at the same time, because of the political landscape in the United States, because Congress is expected to remain divided, Joe Biden will likely be a bit constrained in some of these very progressive and potentially damaging for business policies that he had campaigned on, things like tax increases and much stricter environmental regulations. So investors are definitely looking at this as sort of a status quo that would be very positive for business.
What about international trade? It's picking up again, not only in China, but also in Germany. How are investors reacting?
The data we've been getting on international trade is definitely adding to the positive sentiment on markets. We saw over the weekend data from China showing that exports had risen about 11%, much higher than expected. The Chinese economy has really been the one bright spot for the global economy this year. The economy in China is really the only major country expected to post growth this year. It's really been driving the world, including here in Germany. Things like Mercedes-Benz, other automakers have really benefited from the strength of the Chinese economy. We also did get data from Germany today showing exports are recovering as well. But of course, the big question is whether these countries can maintain momentum as we enter new lockdowns and continue to fight the coronavirus.
Chelsea, thank you. Chelsea Delaney in Frankfurt.